Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 8th. Yeah, I had to get closer there to find out what the date is. Any surprise here? We moved along just as expected, actually peaked up towards the top, and they sold it off right in between, and no shock with that. We're also seeing right here development at the DOC now. Look at this. We're getting confluence of both DOC red. Hasn't rolled over yet, but close. But you're seeing the potential of cyan crossing green right there. And we knew this was going to happen. We already had seen the short-term buyers fall off, midterm there next, and the spike of the orange now. Orange obviously is elevated, so I would expect to see, orange come down, and that would give it a little bit more of a boost. And then the next spike up of orange, you would definitely get into this kind of scenario like where we had over here, where you started seeing all these spikes. And this corresponded to what we were talking about in the shakeout, where you get the rising azure here with the gold already. In this case, a lot flatter than the previous move, even though this one has been actually pretty sustained early on, flattened out, and then we had the secondary spike. It's not as strong, and that's pretty clear to see. From an NQ standpoint, likewise. So we're starting to get a confluence below the negative 13.5. Now, this is what I was talking about, though. You have the reset of the steel. But as long as it remains under the negative 13, it's the equivalent of it being coming from above. So it's just a matter of will it cross back above that negative 13 and be enough with potentially a reset of green in that. This particular stage, no. Now, do we have a lot of short interest? When you look at the NASDAQ for the daily, no, it's still. So I would expect that, relative supports are going to hold, except for the fact that we've got positive extremes. And so the potential for breaking that 76 on the NASDAQ is real, but it would just be to the 61%. So we'll just keep an eye on that. Intraday be pretty easiest. And, it's almost sad when it's this easy to see. And I know I always get a little shocked at these kinds of things when they make these moves that are so obviously not going to be sustained, and you get exactly what you expect. From a euro standpoint, again, this is not going to do anything in the eurozone. It is in a world of hurt in general, and that's not going to change. Oil still maintaining. Momentary glitch there, but oil is still maintaining its mid-level range here. Even with the white spike, we would expect to see that fade down a little bit, but we've had some pretty decent DOC with the red. And so you get an idea when you have the DOC rising versus softness in the NBI. Now, even with the softness in the NBI, though, you'll notice that the magenta is still above yellow. And that's why it's not getting the downdraft. And so it isn't enough just to see the spike. You've actually got to have that corresponding crossover because it represents that transition where one side has overcome the other completely and in a significant way. When you get a white spike and you get magenta maintaining it, as soon as it spikes back above and doesn't cross below yellow, that's a strong move, and you would definitely get a breakout well above that 50%. So these are the little things to look for when you see that from a gold standpoint. Doing what was expected. It took a little bit longer simply because, again, that magenta was over the yellow, but once it crossed over, it gave way all the way back to filling the zero. So those are the expectations when we get that kind of signaling. From a Bitcoin in that, we talked about this. I expected it to just languish a bit the same. Now it has filled. The earlier positive extremes, it started to fill these right here. And that just leaves, well, that one's already been taken care of. So literally, it's now completed that fill. And perfect. It's doing exactly what we would expect. I think that the ETH actually has held up a bit better. So it's been stronger, not as much short activity. And so that'll have a much better potential breakout relative to its peer in Bitcoin. 50K chart. I don't think it's up yet. No, it was up a second ago, and then you heard the beep, and then it resets. So this is the world. So post-market, you can see, might as well just show this real quick. Languishing a little bit, and literally just again checking stops, breaks down, and then just comes back to that same relative 0 point that the previous day had finished at. And you can see the late day created the little spike, collapsed it, so they cleared out all the stops. Intraday was mostly a back and forth. Let me go back to the beginning of it, and you can see that the volume is really not there when this is what we're seeing from overall 5 minute charts. Doesn't quite give you the same view as the 5K, because you could have a lot of volume within one 5 minute tick and not having a chart versus a tick chart that's only going to be each bar based on the actual total number of trades. But we had the peak, made a lower high, and it was pretty decent with the spike, but it was pretty dramatic. And then from an intraday, here you go. There's that Azure rising on the shakeout, begins to roll over. As soon as it begins to roll over, yes, the short signal had started earlier, but it took a little bit of time for that to make the final breakdown, and that's what it leads to. So this is that kind of back and forth that is very typical of normal behaving market, and that mean reversion is designed to just really take out those that are just trying to keep tight stops, and that's nice to see, I think, from a traditional standpoint of the way the market behaves regularly. So that's the long and the short of it for now. As always, trade well. We'll talk again later. See you on the Skype chat.